Hello and welcome to eNews Weekend Edition. I'm Shahan Ramkisoon. It's great to have you with us. Our top stories tonight. Rolling power cuts for a third day in a row as Eskom struggles to keep the lights on. And as government urges people to know their status on World AIDS Day, some activists say not enough is being done. This leads our bulletin tonight, and it's good news, of course. If they win, Banyana Banyana is taking on Nigeria in the AFCON Women's Final. The match is taking place in Ghana. The South African team could make history if they secure a victory against Nigeria. A win would see them become AFCON Women Champions for the first time. We'll have a detailed bulletin, more on this rather, a little later with our reporter Hloni Mtimkulu. To this story now, rolling blackouts will continue until 10 o'clock tonight. That's as South Africans are subjected to load shedding for a third day in a row. Eskom implemented stage 2 load shedding today. The utility says there's been continued pressure on the national grid. People are encouraged to switch off non-essential appliances. Load shedding schedules can be found online. Know your status. That's the theme for this year's World AIDS Day. The campaign is aimed at encouraging people to get tested and get treatment fast. The main event was held in Dobsonville, Soweto, and addressed by Deputy President David Mabuza. Zikhona Chona has more.
Young people are the focus here. South Africa has been applauded worldwide for its progress in handling HIV/AIDS. But young people make up the biggest group of new infections, often due to ignorance about the disease. And that makes them vulnerable, especially young women who enter relationships with older men.
This sugar daddy syndrome must fall. The blesser syndrome must fall.
Often these men don't know their HIV status or choose not to tell their young partners. Deputy President David Mabuza had a strong message about this.
If you love your daughter, can you accept another man to sleep with your daughter? No. Why then do you sleep with another man's daughter?
The people gathered at Dobsonville Stadium say empowering young people and educating them on the disease is vital.
You know, we live in South Africa, unfortunately, that affects every single hour 9 young girls between the ages of 15 and 24 get infected with HIV. It's those very young people who are going to turn that around.
On a practical note, Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says a new flavored female condom will be launched next year. Along with knowing your status, it's one more way for young women to take back the power in their sexual relations. Zikhona Chona, Dobsonville in Soweto.
Meanwhile, dozens of people have taken to the streets of Khayelitsha in Cape Town to mark World AIDS Day. South Africa is well on its way to meeting the United Nations goals for HIV/AIDS, but as Leanne Jansen reports, activists believe more needs to be done.
It seems festive, but there's a serious undertone to this march through the streets of Khayelitsha.
There's a lot of stigma around people living generally with HIV as well. So today we're saying, we're stamping that one. We don't want anyone to stigmatize the other people.
South Africa has the highest HIV prevalence in the world, with 7.1 million people living with the virus. According to UNAIDS data, 18.8% of people between the ages of 15 and 49 are infected. The United Nations' goals for 2020 are to have 90% of people who have HIV to be diagnosed, 90% of those diagnosed to be on antiretroviral treatment, and 90% of those who receive ARVs to be virally suppressed. The call by the marchers, led by Médecins Sans Frontières and TB HIV Care, is for government to step up the accessibility of ARVs and prevention treatment, mainly among the youth.
We want them to remain HIV negative because we don't want other people to stay to also become HIV positive. So we have PrEP as well, so that's what we're here for. Today you can see there's a lot of young people. We want them to start PrEP so that they cannot be infected with HIV.
So, on World AIDS Day 2018, their message is clear that prevention is better than cure. Leanne Jansen, Cape Town.
And now to a puzzling sight for motorists in Pretoria this weekend. A group of people dressed in academic gowns are on busy street corners of the capital. They're all members of the Youth Empowerment Organization. Malungelo Boy went to find out what they're doing.
Joseph Molepo has been at this busy intersection in Pretoria for about 5 hours. He, along with fellow graduates, are on a mission to raise funds, not for their own studies, but for others. They are asking for as little as 5 rand, a small amount that could make a big difference. Molepo is now a qualified lecturer in public administration at the Northwest University. But he understands the pain and worry of not knowing how to pay for your studies.
At some point, I have suffered. I did not have funds to go to the university, so the community assisted me. So I'm plowing back to the community. We managed to assist 108 students, some with registration fees, some with the outstanding fees.
But how do prospective students benefit from this, and how do they qualify?
People are coming from a difficult background, so we check those things. And then also we work with universities, or the university also assists us in terms of identifying students.
Joan Glovu is one of the 108 students who have received help from the Youth Empowerment Organization's initiative last year. When his father died in 2017, he was left with a bill from the Tshwane University of Technology.
My fees by that time in Ecuador something like 6,500 rand. So I got this idea, we can start this, we can start this thing, and then my fees 6,500.
Motorists impressed by the fundraisers in their academic gowns have opened their hearts and their wallets.
I think they are building actually their own future, and for themselves, and not for themselves as well, but also for us to make sure that the unemployment rate should at least stop.
The graduates say they will be on the streets raising money in their gowns every weekend until the end of January. They hope to send as many students as possible into the new academic year. Malungelo Boy, Pretoria.
Coming up on eNews, a youth camp geared towards shaping our future leaders. Welcome back. As the 16 Days of Activism campaign continues, cases of women and child abuse continue to be a daily occurrence in South Africa. Abuse survivor and activist Thembi Maphanga was left with third-degree burns on her entire body. Zikhona Chona sat down with her at a home in Middelburg.
Charming, lots of jokes.
Thembi Maphanga describes the early years of being in love with her abuser. This is the same man who would later become the father of her daughter.
But I remember after falling pregnant, and we were so excited, and 3 months down the line he lost his job, and which wasn't something that he seemed stressed about, because I was working as well, and he was positive that he's gonna get something. But then now and then we had fights, unnecessary fights, which they were not physical.
Maphanga says when she came home after giving birth to their beautiful daughter, Kiamogetswe, things became worse.
He also started becoming violent and being physical and all that. But even though I knew it was wrong, but I kept on forgiving him because I believed that he meant what he said by saying he's going to change. You know, those thoughts that goes through your mind, you know, thinking if you break up with your baby daddy, your child is not going to have a daddy, or you just think, what are people going to say? You failed your relationship. There's so many things.
On the 13th of March 2010, after the couple had had a disagreement at a close friend's housewarming, her abuser asked her if they could talk. After she joined him in their bedroom, he locked the door and poured petrol all over her body.
I'm screaming, my daughter is screaming, and now we're fighting for the match. Like, I'm trying to keep his hands apart, but he overpowers me eventually, and he ignites. He leaves us there in a locked room, full of flames, and he jumped through the window. And I had to think fast, what am I gonna do? Do I grab my daughter? What do I do? And I'm in flames. I can't even see where I'm going. But then followed him through the window.
Neighbors rescued her daughter out of the fire, but the little girl succumbed to her injuries soon after. Mapanga spent a year in ICU and a further 5 months at a rehab, learning how to walk, talk, eat, and even smile.
Day in, day out, I just thought, oh gosh, I just want to die. And I'm here today. It's still painful thinking of my daughter, but then I survived. And I wouldn't want any woman to go through what I went through. Those little signs, they're not going to disappear. They escalate into something big.
Her daughter, Kiamogetswe, was buried as she lay in a coma. Mapanga says while waking up to the news broke her, it also gave her strength. She's now an activist against gender-based violence.
I thought to myself, okay, daughter, you are gone. I'm going to represent you. I'm going to be your voice. And yeah, I took it from there.
Mapanga has recently started the Miss T Foundation, which she hopes to use to remind women that they are strong enough to leave at the first sign of abuse. Zikhona Shona, Middelburg in Mpumalanga.
Now, usually people head to Robben Island as tourists, but the Amakathrada Foundation is hosting a camp for youth leaders there. The aim is to deepen the political and historical knowledge of future leaders. Pilari Setusa has this story.
Looking back to look forward. 60 youngsters are on a leadership camp on what some would call hallowed ground. Robben Island will be their home for 4 days as they learn the fundamentals of being active citizens.
This is the third youth camp that we're bringing young people to. The first one that Kathrada himself won't be with young people. We thought it important for young people to understand the significance of this place, its historical significance, but also as a testimony to the human spirit. These young people would need to understand their roles, their responsibilities to this democracy.
On their first night, an intimate prison tour by a former warder and prisoner left the group emotional.
Immediately as I walked into the prison, it was a feeling that I couldn't describe because I know what they went through was for me and my freedom. Maybe not my freedom only, but South Africa's as a whole.
I felt emotional and painful because like when you look at and hear the story and what has happened, it's very painful.
Political awareness is very low in the community, especially whereby privilege exists. So if you don't know what's really wrong because your day-to-day is going fine, then you won't really be there to question the real issues that maybe others are facing. I think that'll be a challenge for myself to go back home to.
From the intensive camp, they will go back home to form youth clubs in their respective communities with the support of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Piladi Setusa, Robben Island in the Western Cape.
Some international news now, and US President Donald Trump is among those who have paid tribute to one of his predecessors, George H.W. Bush. Trump has praised his unwavering commitment to faith, family, and his country. The 41st president had one of the most decorated CVs in American political history. He died peacefully at his home in Houston at the age of 94. That's all the sport we have for you this evening. After the break, we have your weather details, and then a museum in London needs over 3 million rand in order to display a decades-old portrait of author Charles Dickens.
Welcome to the Weather Centre on Saturday night. We're expecting fog to move in along the west coast overnight and into Sunday morning. It'll be a similar day to today over the western part of the country, with a chance of rain along the east coast on Sunday. And we're expecting sizzling hot temperatures over the northeastern parts, with isolated thundershowers over the northeastern and eastern interior. In the southwest, we'll see clouds building up ahead of a cold front which arrives late on Sunday night. It'll be a dry day for the Northern Cape, with highs heading into the mid-30s for Uppington and Prieska, as well as Passersburg and Kimberley. Mostly clear with highs in the low 30s over the Western Cape interior. Partly cloudy as we head towards the coast, Cape Town and Longabon at 25 degrees. Warm to hot as we head towards the Eastern Cape, partly cloudy and dry along the coastline, but with the possibility of thundershowers over the far eastern part of the province. A bit of rain is expected along the KZN coastline, with thunderstorms over the interior. 27 for Pietermaritzburg and Vryheid. Isolated thundershowers are forecast throughout Mpumalanga, with a hot Sunday in store. 30 degrees for eMagazini and Ermelo, Skukuza topping a sizzling hot 37. That toasty weather also extends through to Limpopo, Messina just shy of 40 degrees. Isolated thundershowers are expected over the western and southern part of the province, as well as into the eastern part of northwest. Zeerust and Rustenburg topping 38, with Potchefstroom, Mahikeng and Vryburg all at 37 degrees. The Free State can expect a mostly clear and hot Sunday, with most highs in the low 30s. And in Gauteng, we're also expecting sizzling hot temperatures. 34 for Johannesburg, 36 degrees for Pretoria, with a possibility of thundershowers mainly over the northern part of the province. On Monday, we'll see a cold front cool temperatures off over the southern and southeastern parts. It also brings in the possibility of rainfall. Thundershowers are expected over the far eastern parts, with heatwave conditions continuing into Gauteng all the way through to Tuesday. And you'll see cooler weather reaching KwaZulu-Natal on Tuesday. That's all from the Weather Centre for now. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
And finally, a long-lost portrait of Charles Dickens worth millions was found at a junkyard sale in KwaZulu-Natal last year. It was bought as part of a box of trinkets for under 500 rand. Now, the painting has been acquired and restored by experts in London. Our UK correspondent Natalie Powell has more.
The corridors and rooms of the Dickens family home are now lined with memorabilia of the author who shot to international fame through novels like Nicholas Nickleby, Oliver Twist and A Christmas Carol. But there's one item missing from the museum's collection, and until recently had been missing altogether: this portrait.
The portrait was painted during the autumn of 1843. We know that it stayed with the artist Margaret Gillies for years afterwards. And there's correspondence between Frederick Kitten and Margaret Gillies in 1886. And she says in these letters that she had lost sight of it. She hadn't seen it for some years and didn't know where it was.
Incredibly, over 130 years after these letters were sent, the portrait turned up in Pietermaritzburg, covered in yellow mould, in rather unusual circumstances.
The man who originally acquired it paid £27 for this box of trinkets that came out of a, sort of a junk sale, and then after he did his research realised what it was.
It's now believed the portrait was passed on to the artist's adopted daughter, whose brothers-in-law emigrated to South Africa.
This is a once-in-a-century find. We would never have expected to see something so significant that hadn't been discovered, even if it was in someone's private collection.
Despite the poor condition it was found in, the portrait has since been restored in London. But to see it inside this house, the equivalent of over 3 million rand is needed. The portrait was last on display in London at the Royal Academy of Arts in 1844, but it's hoped that funds can be raised to give it a permanent home here at the Charles Dickens Museum, now that it's finally been rediscovered. Natalie Powell, London.
From me, Shahan Ramkisoon and the rest of the team, good night.